Bianca had always felt that something was off. It wasn't just one thing, but a collection of small moments that piled up over the last few weeks. At first, she thought it was nothing, just the usual busy spells her husband, Tom, went through at work. But as time passed, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was changing between them. He was distant, more than usual. Tom, who had always been warm and affectionate, now seemed to spend most of his evenings on his phone, eyes glued to the screen, his attention never fully on her. Even when they ate dinner together, it felt like there was a wall between them. He barely made conversation, offering only short responses and an absent-minded smile when she tried to engage him. Bianca couldn't understand what was happening. She thought about asking him directly, but something told her that it would be met with more silence, maybe a weak excuse. And that wasn't enough to ease her growing worry. It didn't help that Tom had been leaving the house later and later every evening. Bianca had always been used to his long work hours, but now it was different. He wasn't just going to work. He was coming home at odd hours, sometimes after midnight, with no clear explanation. He'd tell her he was stuck in traffic, or that a late meeting had run long, but the excuses started to feel rehearsed. Bianca knew Tom. She knew his routine, his habits, and this was not him. Her instincts were screaming that something was wrong. Yet every time she brought it up, Tom would brush her off with a dismissive smile or a quick excuse, as if he didn't want to discuss it. One night, as she sat on the couch, flipping through a photo album from their vacation last summer, she glanced up to see Tom slip into the other room, his phone still in his hand. He quickly locked it, a habit he hadn't had before. A cold chill ran through her as her thoughts spiraled. Her mind raced, wondering if he was hiding something. It wasn't just his strange behavior, there was something about the secrecy in his movements that unsettled her. Bianca had always trusted Tom completely, but now she was left with a feeling that her trust might have been misplaced. She tried to brush off her fears. Maybe she was just overthinking it. She told herself that he was probably just stressed about work, or maybe there was something else going on that he didn't want to burden her with. But that didn't stop the doubt from creeping in. Then, one late afternoon, it happened. The knock at the door. Bianca had just finished putting away the groceries and was settling into her chair with a book when she heard it. At first she hesitated. Who could it be at this hour? She glanced at the clock, just past 5 p.m. As she walked to the door, her heart began to race. She wasn't expecting anyone. When she opened it, there was a man standing on her porch, holding a briefcase. He wasn't someone she recognized. He was dressed in a sharp suit, and his expression was serious. "Mrs. Bianca Bennett?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "Yes," Bianca replied, her confusion growing. "Can I help you?" "I need to speak with you about your husband," he said, glancing behind him before stepping forward. The words hit Bianca like a punch to the stomach. Her mind went blank. "My husband, what about him?" "I'm afraid this isn't easy to explain," he began, and Bianca's stomach turned. "I've been hired to find some information, and it's about your husband, Tom. He's involved in something serious." Bianca felt her legs go weak. She stepped back, motioning for him to enter. "Please, come in." The man sat down and opened his briefcase. He laid out several documents in front of her. Her heart raced as he explained everything. Tom had been hiding a lot from her, more than just late nights and odd behavior. He had been involved in shady financial dealings, and there were even rumors of an affair with someone at work. Bianca felt her world crumbling around her. The man had evidence, photos, documents, and phone records that all pointed to Tom's betrayal. It wasn't just the affair. It was a web of lies and deceit that Bianca had never imagined. Her mind struggled to process the information. Tom had been lying to her for months, maybe even longer. The man handed her a folder filled with papers that contained information she never thought she'd need to know. "I'm not here to cause trouble," the man said softly, "but I believe you deserve the truth. Tom has been keeping secrets, and those secrets have put you both at risk." Bianca sat there in shock, trying to make sense of everything. The man left her with the documents, and she stood there for a long time, staring at the pile of evidence. It was overwhelming, but one thing was clear. Her husband, the man she trusted, had been living a lie. She knew she had to confront him, but the fear of what might come next gripped her. What would she say? How would she even begin to understand what had been going on? The evening passed in a blur. Tom came home late again, just like he always did. Bianca waited for him, her thoughts racing. When he walked in, she couldn't hide the look of betrayal on her face. He looked surprised to see her waiting up, but he quickly covered it with a smile. "Hey babe, long day at work." "Is that so?" Bianca asked, her voice steady, though her hands shook. "Or is it just another lie?" Tom's face went pale, the smile fading. "What are you talking about?" Bianca didn't say anything. Instead, she placed the folder on the table in front of him. He froze, his eyes darting between the documents and Bianca's expression. For the first time in a long while, Bianca saw fear in his eyes. "Tom, what is this?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Tom swallowed hard. He sat down slowly, looking at the evidence, then back at Bianca. His eyes flickered with guilt, but he didn't speak right away. Finally, he sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Bianca, I didn't want you to find out like this," he began. "I never meant to hurt you." Bianca felt a sharp pain in her chest. "How could you?" she asked, her voice trembling now. "After everything, how could you do this to me?" Tom's head dropped as he finally confessed. "I made mistakes. I got involved with someone at work, and I've been hiding it. I've been keeping things from you, and I'm so sorry." But it wasn't just the affair, Bianca realized. As Tom continued to talk, she learned more about the shady business deals he had been a part of, the lies, the manipulation. Everything that had seemed so normal between them now felt like a mask. She was married to a stranger. The knock on the door had changed everything. She wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain: her trust in Tom had been shattered, and nothing would ever be the same. The hours that followed were filled with a heavy silence between Bianca and Tom. After his confession, everything felt frozen, as if time itself had paused to let the gravity of the situation sink in. Tom tried to explain himself, but each word seemed hollow, empty, as though he were speaking from a script he had rehearsed 1,000 times. Bianca couldn't bring herself to look at him for long. Her heart ached with the betrayal, and her mind raced to process everything she had just heard. How had she missed the signs? How had she allowed herself to be so blind? She stood up and paced the room, her thoughts a whirlwind of confusion and hurt. The man who had once been her confidant, her partner in everything, had turned into someone she barely recognized. How could she have shared a life with him, built a future with him, and still not have known who he truly was? The very foundation of their relationship, the trust that had held them together for years, had crumbled in an instant. Tom remained seated, his eyes never leaving the ground, clearly overwhelmed with guilt. But Bianca was past feeling sorry for him. She wasn't even sure if she could feel sympathy anymore. All she could feel was the anger bubbling inside her, mixing with the deep sadness. The anger wasn't just for the affair or the lies, but for the years she had spent living in a fantasy. Bianca had given Tom her everything, her love, her loyalty, her trust. And this was the result. "You've been living a double life, haven't you?" Bianca's voice broke through the thick silence, cold and steady. "This whole time, you've been pretending to be something you're not. And now I'm the fool who has to pick up the pieces." Tom opened his mouth to respond, but Bianca held up her hand. "Number, don't try to justify it. I've heard enough." Her mind flashed back to all the moments of doubt, the little things she had dismissed. His late nights, his strange behavior, his sudden defensiveness whenever she asked about his day. It all clicked now, like a puzzle that had been too hard to solve until the last piece fell into place. Bianca realized that she had been lying to herself, convincing herself that everything was fine because she didn't want to face the truth. But the truth was undeniable now. Tom had been lying to her for months, maybe longer. Her thoughts were interrupted by Tom's quiet voice. "I never wanted to hurt you, Bianca. I didn't want any of this. I didn't know how to fix it. It spiraled out of control." Bianca shook her head. You think saying you didn't know how to fix it makes it better? You've been deceiving me for God knows how long, and now you expect me to believe you?" The bitterness in her words felt sharp, cutting through the silence in the room. Tom seemed to shrink in on himself. His shoulders slumped as he finally raised his eyes to meet hers. The guilt in his eyes was almost unbearable. Bianca didn't want to see it. She didn't want to feel any of this anymore. "I need space," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need to think, to figure out what I'm going to do." Tom didn't argue. He simply nodded, his face pale with the weight of his actions. Bianca walked away, needing distance from him, needing time to clear her head. She left the living room, retreating to their bedroom, where she closed the door behind her. Her heart was pounding in her chest, and she couldn't breathe. She didn't know where to begin, how to process the wreckage of everything she had believed in. She stood by the window, staring out into the night, not knowing what the future would hold. It wasn't just about Tom's betrayal anymore. It was about everything, the lies, the secrets, the years spent in a relationship that wasn't as it seemed. And more than anything, Bianca felt the deep, aching need for clarity. She needed to know what was real, what she could trust. Could she ever trust him again? Or was it time to walk away? Her thoughts were interrupted by the ringing of her phone. It was a text from her best friend, Lily. "You okay? I've been thinking about you all night." Bianca stared at the message for a moment, then typed back quickly. "No, I'm not okay. Tom's been lying to me. He's been hiding things. I don't even know who he is anymore." The response came almost immediately. "I'm so sorry, Bianca. You don't deserve this. If you need me, I'm here." Bianca felt a small comfort in Lily's words, though they didn't change anything. She knew her friend meant well, but this wasn't something that could be fixed with kind words. This was about trust, about betrayal, about the shattering of everything she had once held dear. As the night wore on, Bianca couldn't shake the feeling that everything was slipping through her fingers. She sat on the edge of the bed, looking at her phone screen, but her mind was elsewhere. On the man who had been her partner for so long, the man who had let her down in the worst possible way. A knock at the door seemed to echo in her thoughts, the knock that had revealed the truth. Could she ever go back to the life they had? Or was this the end? The next morning arrived slowly, and Bianca felt like she had barely slept. The entire night had been consumed by thoughts of Tom and the revelation of his lies. She had tossed and turned in their bed, unable to escape the flood of emotions that continued to crash over her. When the sun finally peeked through the curtains, it only made her feel more exhausted, more aware of the fact that she couldn't keep running from this reality. The person she had trusted the most, the person she thought she knew inside and out, had betrayed her in the most unimaginable way. The anger that had simmered inside her last night now burned with a sharper intensity, but there was something else too, a quiet, unshakable sadness. Bianca got out of bed and walked to the bathroom, looking at her reflection in the mirror. Her eyes were red and puffy from lack of sleep and crying. She barely recognized herself. The woman who had once been so certain of her future, so sure of her marriage, now felt completely adrift. There was a lingering emptiness in her chest, and she didn't know what to do with it. Her hands trembled as she splashed water on her face, trying to clear her mind. But there was no escaping the truth. Everything had changed. Tom was still in the house, but he had kept his distance since the night before. Bianca hadn't spoken to him since her confrontation. She wasn't sure what she wanted from him anymore. Was she angry enough to end things completely? Or was there still a part of her that was willing to try and understand? She couldn't answer that question. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to demand that he explain himself fully, while another part wanted to run away, to leave it all behind and start fresh, away from the pain he had caused her. After a long pause, Bianca made up her mind. She had to talk to him. She needed closure, even if she wasn't sure what that meant yet. As she walked down the stairs, she found Tom sitting in the kitchen, staring at his coffee mug. He hadn't even noticed her approach, his mind clearly elsewhere. The silence between them was thick, suffocating. Tom, Bianca's voice broke through the stillness, and he looked up, startled. His face softened when he saw her, but his eyes were full of regret. Bianca, he said, his voice low. I'm sorry, I don't know how to fix this. I don't know how to make it right. Bianca's heart twisted at the pain in his voice, but she didn't let her guard down. You can't fix this, Tom. Not just with words. You've broken my trust. You've lied to me over and over again. I don't know who you are anymore. She paused, her chest tight. And I don't know if I want to find out. Tom's face fell, and for a moment, the man she had once known seemed to vanish completely, replaced by someone unfamiliar. He stood up and stepped closer, but Bianca instinctively took a step back. His presence no longer offered the comfort it once had. Instead, it made her feel small and vulnerable, as though he could crush her heart all over again. I didn't mean for any of this to happen, he said, his voice breaking. I got caught up in something I couldn't control. I never wanted to hurt you. Please, Bianca, don't let this be the end. Bianca shook her head, her mind swimming with the conflicting emotions that still held her in their grip. She had so many questions, so much anger, but she didn't know if any of it mattered anymore. He had crossed a line, one that couldn't easily be erased. You had choices, Tom, she said, her voice steady but firm. And you chose to keep lying to me. You chose to keep things from me. I can't just forget that. The silence that followed was heavy. Tom stood there, helpless, while Bianca struggled to keep her emotions in check. It was so hard, harder than anything she had ever done before. She had loved this man. She had built her life around him, trusted him with everything she had. And now she didn't know what was left. I don't know what to do, Bianca whispered, the tears threatening to spill over. I feel like I've lost everything. I don't even know who you are anymore. Tom took a deep breath, clearly struggling to maintain his composure. I can't undo the past, Bianca. I know I've messed up, but I swear to you, I never meant to hurt you. I love you. Please, let's work through this. His words hung in the air, but Bianca couldn't bring herself to believe them. Love wasn't supposed to feel like this. It wasn't supposed to feel like a burden or a lie. She had always believed that love meant honesty, openness, and trust. But now all of that seemed so far out of reach. Bianca stood there for a long time, thinking. She wanted to scream, to lash out at him, to make him feel the pain she was going through, but she didn't. Instead, she asked the question that had been plaguing her since the moment she'd learned the truth. Why, Tom? Why did you do it? Tom hesitated, his eyes filled with shame. He finally spoke, his voice barely a whisper. I don't know. It was something that started out small, something I thought I could control, but I couldn't. And then it just spiraled out of control. I didn't know how to stop it. Bianca listened, but his words didn't bring her any comfort. There were no easy answers, no excuses that could make her forget the betrayal. She could see the pain in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. She couldn't just sweep it under the rug and pretend everything would go back to normal. The trust had been broken, and Bianca wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. She turned away, walking toward the front door, her decision starting to solidify in her mind. I need space, Tom, she said, her voice firm. I need time to think. I can't keep doing this. I don't know what's next for us, but right now, I need to be alone. Without waiting for him to respond, she opened the door and stepped outside, the cool air hitting her face as she left the house. It felt like a weight was being lifted off her shoulders, but also like a part of her was being torn away. She didn't know where she was going or how things would turn out, but she knew she couldn't stay in that house, in that life anymore. Something had broken, something irreversible, and Bianca needed to find out who she was without Tom by her side. The next few days were a blur. Bianca stayed at her friend Lily's apartment, finding some semblance of peace in the quiet, away from the chaos of her home and the tangled emotions that clung to her like a second skin. She spent hours pacing around the small living room, the weight of her decisions pressing down on her. She could feel the emptiness that Tom had left behind, but also the sudden sense of freedom. For the first time in weeks, maybe even months, Bianca didn't feel like she was living in someone else's shadow. She was on her own, but being alone didn't feel as good as she had hoped. Every day she went over the same thoughts in her head. What had gone wrong? What could she have done differently? And most importantly, what to do next? She had confronted Tom, asked for the truth, and now she was facing the aftermath. The question lingered. Was this really the end of their marriage? Or was it just the beginning of something else? Bianca didn't have the answer. She was still unsure if she could ever forgive him. But she knew she couldn't go back to the way things were. The lies had been too much. On the third day of her stay at Lily's, Bianca's phone rang. She glanced at the screen and saw Tom's name flashing. For a moment, she hesitated, her finger hovering over the screen. She could ignore it. She had every right to. But something told her she needed to hear him out. That there was still something left to say, even if it only confirmed what she already knew. With a deep breath, she answered. Bianca. Tom's voice sounded strained, filled with a mix of frustration and regret. Please, can we talk? I need to see you. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I can't stand this distance between us. I need to explain myself better. Bianca's heart skipped a beat, but she remained calm. We've talked, Tom. We've said everything that needs to be said. I don't think so, he replied quickly. Please, just give me one more chance to explain. I promise I'm not the man I was last week. I'm trying, Bianca. I'm trying to make this right. She could hear the desperation in his voice. It was painful, but also, it felt manipulative. Bianca had been here before, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to fall for it again. She let the silence hang between them, the weight of his words settling on her. I don't know if I can trust you again, Tom, Bianca finally said, her voice soft but resolute. You've broken me, and I don't know if there's anything left to fix. I need to figure out what I want, not just what you want. Tom was silent for a long moment, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, more reflective. I understand, he said. I really do. But I need you to know that I love you, Bianca. I always have. All of this. It wasn't supposed to happen. I'll do whatever it takes to prove it to you. Just give me a chance. Bianca closed her eyes, feeling the weight of his words. She wanted to believe him, she really did. She had loved him for so long, and despite the lies and the betrayal, there was still a part of her that wanted to fix things. But the deeper part of her, the one that had been hurt and let down, told her that this wasn't just something that could be patched up with apologies. She had to be strong. She had to stay true to herself. I don't know if we can fix this, Tom, she whispered. I need time to think. And right now, I need you to give me space, please. She hung up before he could respond, the decision already made. Bianca knew that she couldn't go back to the life she had with Tom, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to give up completely either. There was still a small part of her that clung to the hope that maybe, just maybe, they could rebuild what they had. But for now, that hope felt distant, like a faint star in the night sky. It would take time to see if it was worth pursuing or if it was just a dream that would fade into the darkness. The rest of the day passed in a haze of thoughts, but as evening approached, Bianca decided to take a walk to clear her mind. She needed to step outside of her emotions for a while, to breathe without the suffocating weight of the past few days pressing down on her. As she walked through the park, the cool breeze brushed against her skin, and for a moment, she allowed herself to just be, without worrying about what came next. The quiet of the evening, the chirping of birds, the rustling of the leaves in the trees, all seemed to remind her that life continued, even when everything else seemed to stop. She found a bench and sat down, watching the sunset as it painted the sky in shades of orange and purple. She closed her eyes, trying to focus on the present moment instead of the whirlwind of confusion in her mind. She needed to find peace, whether it came from forgiveness or from walking away. After a long while, Bianca's phone buzzed again, this time with a message from Lily. Are you okay? I know you're struggling, but you need to make a decision soon, Bianca. Whatever it is, don't let fear hold you back." Bianca smiled softly at the text. She knew Lily was right. She had to make a decision about her marriage, about her future, about who she wanted to be. Fear had held her in place for too long. It was time to take control, to choose the life she wanted, not the life she had been handed. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Bianca would not let this define her. She would take the time she needed, and when the moment came, she would choose the path that was best for her, no matter how difficult it might be. The following days were an emotional roller coaster for Bianca. She spent her time in a fog, unable to fully focus on anything. Each morning, she woke up with a heavy heart, the weight of her decisions pulling her down. The questions continued to swirl in her mind. Should she try to fix things with Tom? Could their relationship ever go back to what it once was? Or had the damage been done, and was it time to move on for good? As much as she wanted answers, Bianca realized that there were none to be found in a rush. She needed to slow down, to give herself the time and space to process everything properly. She couldn't keep going in circles, replaying every conversation, every moment with Tom, looking for a reason to justify staying. The truth was, the hurt she felt wasn't just from his betrayal. It was the years of broken trust, the small lies that had built up and stacked together like a mountain she could no longer ignore. Bianca had given him so many chances, so many opportunities to come clean, to be honest with her. And yet, here she was, trying to find a way to rebuild something that had already started to crumble. On the fourth day after their conversation, Bianca made a decision. She needed to see Tom again, not to fix things immediately, but to hear him out, to make sure she was making the right choice. She knew she couldn't keep running away from the situation, and the silence between them had begun to eat away at her. She needed closure, whatever that meant. When she called him, her hands were shaking. "Tom, we need to talk," she said, her voice surprisingly calm despite the turmoil swirling inside her. "I agree," Tom responded, his voice filled with relief. "I've been waiting for you to call. I'll come to you." They agreed to meet at the same cafe where they'd had their first date, the place where everything had felt easy and right. Bianca hadn't been there in years, but somehow it felt like the right place to meet. The cafe was quiet, the soft hum of conversation and clinking cups providing a gentle backdrop to the tension that hung between them. When Tom walked in, Bianca's heart skipped a beat. He looked the same, tall, with dark hair that still held the same messy charm. But there was something different about him now. The man who had once been so confident and loving seemed smaller, unsure of himself. It made her feel both sad and angry, but mostly indifferent. "Bianca," Tom greeted her softly, his eyes not meeting hers right away. "Hi," she replied, her voice steady. She gestured to the seat across from her. "Sit down, Tom. Let's talk." He sat, his hands fidgeting with the napkin on the table. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The quiet stretched, heavy and uncomfortable, until Tom finally broke it. "I've been thinking about everything, and I know what I did was wrong. I know I hurt you, more than I ever realized. But I swear, Bianca, I didn't mean for it to get so out of hand. It was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. And I'm sorry. I can't say that enough." Bianca stared at him, her emotions swirling. She had heard these words before, sincere but empty. The same apologies, the same promises to change, the same regret. But nothing had changed. He had promised her before, and yet here they were again, stuck in the same painful cycle. "Tom," Bianca said, her voice firm but tinged with sadness, "I don't think I can believe you anymore. I've been asking myself if I can ever trust you again, if I can ever look at you the same way. But the truth is, I don't know. You've hurt me too much. I don't know if I can forgive you for this." Tom's face fell, and for a moment, Bianca saw a flicker of the man she had once loved, the man who had always been there, steady and dependable. but it was gone in an instant, replaced by the guilt and shame of his actions. "I don't want to lose you, Bianca," he said quietly, his voice pleading. "I love you. Please don't make this the end. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right, to prove to you that I can be the man you deserve." Bianca looked at him, her heart aching. She knew that Tom was sorry, that he regretted his actions. But that wasn't enough anymore. She had spent so much time trying to fix things, trying to make their relationship work despite the cracks. But she couldn't do it anymore. She couldn't keep living in the past, holding on to what they once had, when all she had now was the pain of betrayal. "Tom," she said softly, her voice breaking slightly, "I loved you. I really did. But I can't keep doing this. I need to move on, to take care of myself. I need to find out who I am without you." Tom reached across the table, his hand shaking as he placed it on hers. "Please, Bianca," he whispered. "Don't walk away from us. I can change. I will change. I promise." Bianca pulled her hand back, her eyes filling with tears. "I don't know if that's enough anymore, Tom. I don't know if it ever will be." The words hung between them, heavy and final. Bianca stood up, taking one last look at the man she had once believed in. Her heart broke, but there was a sense of relief too, relief that she was finally making the choice that was best for her, even if it hurt. "I need to go," she said quietly. "Goodbye, Tom." And with that, she walked away, leaving the cafe and everything that had once been behind. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time in days, Bianca felt a sense of freedom, as if a weight had been lifted off her shoulders. The decision had been made. It was time to move forward, no matter how hard it would be. She wasn't sure where this path would lead her, but she was ready to find out. The following weeks were a mix of quiet introspection and slow healing. Bianca spent her time focusing on herself, rediscovering parts of her life that had been put on hold during her marriage to Tom. She dove back into her career, pouring her energy into projects that had once excited her, but had taken a backseat to her relationship. She spent more time with friends and family, reconnecting with the people who had always been there for her. And most importantly, she gave herself the permission to be alone, to sit with the discomfort and uncertainty that came with such a massive life change. There were moments when the weight of what she had done, the choice to walk away from Tom, felt unbearably heavy. There were nights when the loneliness crept in, when she longed for the comfort of someone by her side. But as time passed, those feelings became less frequent. She found a new strength in herself that she hadn't realized was there before. She no longer felt defined by her past with Tom. And for the first time in a long while, Bianca felt in control of her own life. One afternoon, as she walked down the street, heading to a cafe she often visited to clear her mind, she received a message from Lily. "Hey, how are you holding up? I've been thinking about you a lot." Bianca smiled at the text. Knowing Lily had been her anchor during this turbulent time, she typed back quickly, "I'm okay. Actually, I'm better than okay. I'm starting to feel like myself again." That night, after spending some time with Lily and a few other friends, Bianca returned home. She sat at her desk, the same desk she had once shared with Tom, and began to reflect on how much she had changed. She was different now, stronger, more confident. The person who had walked away from the cafe weeks ago wasn't the same woman who had walked into it, unsure of everything. The thought of Tom still lingered in her mind, but it no longer carried the same weight. She didn't need his approval to feel validated. She didn't need his love to define her worth. She had spent too long trying to make their relationship work, too long sacrificing parts of herself to hold on to something that wasn't meant to be. Now, Bianca realized that her worth wasn't dependent on anyone else's love. She was enough on her own. As she sat there, the phone in her hand buzzed once again. This time, it was an email from Tom. Her heart skipped a beat as she opened it, her breath catching in her throat. The message was short but heartfelt. "Bianca, I know I've already said this, but I need to say it one more time. I'm sorry. I've spent so much time thinking about how I let you down, and I can't take it back. I'll never forgive myself for the hurt I caused you. I know you're moving on, and I understand. I just needed you to know that I'll always care for you, no matter what." Bianca read the email several times, her mind racing. She felt a pang of sadness, but not in the way she thought she would. It wasn't the sadness of regret or longing. It was the sadness of closure, of finally letting go of something that was never truly hers to hold on to. She thought about how far she had come in such a short time, how much she had learned about herself. She wasn't angry anymore. She didn't need to prove anything to Tom or to anyone else. She had taken control of her life, and that was all that mattered. Without hesitation, Bianca typed a simple reply. "Tom, thank you for your message. I appreciate the apology, but I've made my peace. I'm moving forward now, and I hope you can do the same. Take care." She hit send, feeling a sense of peace wash over her. It wasn't a grand conclusion, nor was it the happy ending she had once imagined. But it was enough. She had learned that sometimes the best way to heal wasn't by holding on, but by letting go. As she set the phone down, Bianca looked out the window at the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the buildings. For the first time in weeks, she felt calm. The future was still uncertain, but Bianca knew she was ready for whatever came next. The journey ahead would be hers to navigate, and this time, she would do it on her terms. With a deep breath, Bianca smiled to herself. She had walked away from a life that wasn't meant for her, and in doing so, had found the freedom to start again. The world was full of possibilities, and for the first time in a long time, she was ready to embrace them all. And so, Bianca stepped forward into her new life, knowing that sometimes the greatest victories are not the ones we win, but the ones we choose to walk away from.